It is a weather alert day, folks, with a rare level 4 moderate risk of severe weather for portions of the Central Plains this afternoon and evening for strong tornadoes, very large hail, and an organized destructive wind threat looking more and more likely. The severe threat shifts east tomorrow and through the rest of the week until a big change in the pattern sets in, and some of you are not going to like this very much. Heat and summer is coming. We're going to break it all down right here today, including the threat for flooding, where we've seen lots of rain already, and the sun is on high alert for a solar flare or coronal mass ejection. We're going to take a look at all of that here coming up, but we're going to start today with the severe weather outlook. Yesterday, we saw over 300 severe weather reports, including many reports of hail over 2 inches in diameter. Sedgwick, Kansas checks in as the winner in the wind department with a gust of 101 miles per hour. That is hurricane force. We saw several tornadoes occur as well. Many of those occurred in central Minnesota, the area that we were actually watching for potential yesterday. A lot of storm chasers captured video of these. Some of these were really picturesque. You can look those up on X. Fortunately, there was not a lot of damage. But we're going to expect many more severe weather reports over the course of today. Welcome in, folks. This is Cold Rain's Weather World. We talk about severe weather. We talk about solar. We talk about the upcoming forecast, tropics, winter weather, whatever's going on and that you need to know about it. We're going to let you know about it and tell you what's going to affect you as you go through your work week. And so if you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button and give us a like if you like the content. Leave a comment in the comment section. Anything I can pray over for you, happy to do that, and pray over all of you generically every day. But let me know if there's anything specific, and please pray for me too. We all need that, folks, and that's the kind of community I want to build here at this channel. But thanks for joining. We're over 800 subscribers, approaching, we're getting close to 900 and 1,000. That's our goal, to get to 1,000 for now. So thank you so much for signing on. We're looking at the severe weather threat from the SPC today, and we see a slight risk essentially from southeastern Wyoming down through Denver and Pueblo over to Oklahoma City into Springfield up to Kansas City and Des Moines, Iowa, where we could see winds, hail, tornadoes, all of the above. But our main area of focus is here in central Kansas and south central Kansas, where we're going to see that big threat for wind later today with an organized wind threat. Tornadoes are a possibility too. We've got a low pressure that's forming, wind shear aloft and down at the surface is going to create an environment favorable for some level of tornado production. It could be a little bit more than even 5% as we go through the day, just depending on how quickly that low pressure gets its act together. But I'm concerned about tornadoes down here as well. Low-level jet coming in, providing that low-level wind shear and helping to maximize the wind threat. You see this big hatched area covering most of Kansas and northern Oklahoma here with a 45% chance of severe wind within 25 miles of a point. So this is going to be a very active day here. You need to stay weather aware, have multiple ways to receive weather alerts, but we're going to see a bow echo move through later, bringing strong winds. Gusts over 70 miles per hour will be common. Power outages will be common as well. Large hail will be common. We could see orange size hail over 2 inches, baseball orange size, maybe even approaching softball size in these hatched areas here, kind of centered over Garden City and Wichita. Those are our main areas of focus for today. But also, as we look out toward the mid-Atlantic down to the deep south, severe weather threat exists today. Not a lot of shear to organize these storms, but we will see some clusters and line segments develop that could enhance wind threat and hail threat briefly. What is driving all of this is what we always ask, and it's the same thing that's been driving everything the last few days. Nothing new and mysterious here. We've got a trough working in from the Four Corners region that's approaching our threat area today. We've got another trough centered over the Mississippi Valley that's been very slow and persistent here to move east. It's been persistent in that area. It's slow to move east. And then this high pressure ridge out here in the Atlantic, this big Bermuda high, is just pumping, loading up the eastern and central U.S. with moisture and warm air out of the Gulf of Cold Rain. Those are the features when you have a big moisture-laden warm air mass and these wind maxes and troughs with cold air aloft moving in. You get big instability. You get organization of showers and thunderstorms, and that's what we're seeing looking as we go along today, this little wind max coming in here into the Kansas, Oklahoma area, this other one shifting in toward the mid-Atlantic region. But that's what's happening as we go through the afternoon. You can see the winds start to pick up in the upper levels as we get later into the evening. The low-level jet, we haven't shown this in a while, but we've got a low-level jet coming in here out of the south and southwest as well. That is going to provide plenty of wind energy to help fuel our wind threat and potentially tornado threat as a little low pressure starts to get its act together here as well. Back some of those winds in the lower part of the atmosphere. Look at this as we go on through the afternoon. You start to see that wind in the low levels, 40-50 knot jet. That's going to help translate those winds down to the surface, and that'll just continue to strengthen off tomorrow and provide an environment favorable for severe weather tomorrow in the Mississippi Valley as well. Looking at Cape this afternoon, check this out. Those whites and blacks and purples return here to Kansas and Oklahoma. Plenty of instability over the eastern central portion of the country as well for pop-up showers and thunderstorms, and that instability will exist through the early evening hours and then wane as it starts to cool and thunderstorms eat that instability up. And then looking at the forward radar, the future radar, we start to see, get into this afternoon, I'm going to go ahead and advance it to maybe 2 o'clock East Coast time, 12 o'clock Mountain Time, so around noon, seeing showers and thunderstorms break out in Colorado and into Nebraska. We're starting to see supercells fire up as we get later on into the evening. Look at this big cluster of supercells in Kansas. Any of these that fire up will have the chance to rotate, produce tornadoes and hail, and then you start to see that bow echo form here back in Kansas. It's not a bow yet, but it's a linear segment, and all of this will organize plenty of shower and thunderstorm activity across the lower Ohio Valley into the mid-Atlantic, down into the southeast as well. We'll put this on into motion. Look at that bow in Kansas. It starts to take shape as we get on into 7, 8 o'clock local time, and that will just persist and just bow out and bring wind damage across much of the state of Kansas into Minnesota. So that's what we're looking at. And you start to see that little swirl. The low pressure is going to start to get its act together, shoot up to the Great Lakes tomorrow, and bring the severe weather threat farther east into the Mississippi Valley too. So that is what we are looking at from a severe weather threat today. So take the threat seriously. Start to see those thunderstorms break out 2, 3, 4 o'clock and really get organized as we get into the early evening hours, folks. Temperatures this afternoon, the coolest spot really is up here in the Pacific, the Atlantic Northeast and the Pacific Northwest, with temperatures in the 60s and 70s across the northern tier, but 80s dominating much of the country. Raleigh 92, actually 90s in the southeast, 88 toward Atlanta, Dallas. You're at 95 down here in Phoenix, 110 down toward Death Valley. We could see 115. So heat is a big problem, and it continues to be a big problem in the desert Southwest, Southwest Texas, 80s and 90s everywhere else. So plenty of warm air to help fuel those thunderstorms. There's your surface map boundary extending from Wyoming down toward Kansas, up into the Great Lakes, and then along into the mid-Atlantic. And that boundary is just set here over the east, providing the focus for showers and thunderstorms. Plenty of rain has fallen. Plenty more will fall. We see excessive rainfall risk. We'll talk about the flooding threat in a minute. There's your severe weather threat. Pop-up showers and thunderstorms generally anywhere from the plains into the east and south as well. And that is your Tuesday forecast, folks. Today's Weather IQ question continues our earthquake theme and is related to the primary cause of earthquakes, and it's cleverly stated. What is the primary cause of most earthquakes? Movement of tectonic plates, volcanic eruptions, undersea landslides, or meteorite impacts? You may be able to rule one of those out right off the bat, but if you know the answer, type it in the comments section. If you don't, just wait till the end of the show and I will reveal it to you. And then you can go and send all of your friends over to Cold Rain's Weather World. Tell them what a cool show we have with Weather IQ and all the other stuff. Word of mouth is the best way to advertise anything, folks. So if you like the content, share it with people. Yeah, I'm afraid we've got flooding concerns again in the forecast for today for parts of the plains and up into the Ohio Valley. We're going to take a look at that here. Satellite imagery, lots of clouds out here in the central plains, clouds and showers along the lower Mississippi Valley all the way up into the northeast. It's sunny here in Morganton, North Carolina, but much cloudier as you head out to the east, get into the Piedmont areas. A little bit of light rain is falling in southern New England, but scattered showers here, and then a big cluster of showers and thunderstorms from, say, Denver all the way into really Wichita, Kansas. And we'll take a look at that here on the radar, but plenty of clouds out there. There's that big cluster of showers and thunderstorms here, organized activity with an MCS that is in the process of moving to the east and kind of dying out a little bit. Showers and thunderstorms within a moist air mass in the lower Mississippi Valley, up into the Ohio Valley, and a few light showers near the Boston and New York City area. Folks, you guys are having a little bit of a wet go of it this morning. Flood watches are up through the afternoon and evening from Pittsburgh down into toward Louisville, Kentucky, over into Roanoke, Virginia, all of West Virginia. And then we've got flood watches again through tomorrow here for Kansas, where we're seeing that big cluster of thunderstorms. We're going to see another cluster move through later. Several inches of rain has fallen in these areas already over the last 24 hours. More to come. Big heat out here in the southwestern quadrant of the country. Excessive heat watches and warnings. Heat advisories are up. It's going to be very, very hot out there. And here are the excessive rain outlooks. A moderate risk here toward Wichita and Kansas, slight risk around that from Des Moines back in through close to Oklahoma City, not quite down there, but then into Kansas City as well. Pittsburgh, you guys are under the gun for heavy rain this afternoon and down into toward Louisville again, and then marginal risk extends down into the lower Mississippi Valley. And we're looking at a general area of 2 to 4 inches of rain here in central and eastern Kansas, 1 to 2, 3 inches of rain as we get on up here into Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania as well. So plenty of rain. These thunderstorms are going to be very efficient rainfall producers within a moist air mass. So looking out ahead as we go on out and take a look at your work week forecast, there is that trough again, moving finally into the Mississippi Valley tomorrow. You can see that here. There it is. This other trough is beginning to kind of wash out a little bit, but it's still, see the little kinks in the lines. There's a weakness there, so that's going to help focus showers and thunderstorms out into the Ohio Valley and on east tomorrow as well. But look at that trough. It kind of works into the Ohio Valley low pressure system, or into the Great Lakes rather. Low pressure system's getting its act together here. Wind in the upper atmosphere is going to continue to maintain a severe weather threat with that wind shear. Look out here in the west. What is this big thing coming in? That is a big ridge, folks. And watch what happens as we go on out into Thursday. Thursday overnight hours, Wednesday night into Thursday morning, Thursday evening. The big trough finally starts to shift into the Ohio Valley. Big ridge coming in, and we know what happens with ridges. Hot weather. So expect to see unsettled weather settle down in the east as we go out in time. We get on out into Friday morning. Big ridge starting to dominate the center portion of the country. And that is what happens to kind of close out the work week, folks. Look at this. Now we've got a big full continental ridge here. What we're going to see is energy in the jet stream along the apex of this ridge translate in. So you're going to see little pieces of energy kind of move along in the flow like this toward the east. And where they track, as long as this ridge is in place, to the north of that ridge and right along that boundary, that's where you're going to see the shower and thunderstorm activity. Mostly, we're going to shut off precipitation as we get on out in time. Looking at the severe threat over the next couple of days, there it is, enhanced risk from really up here near Detroit all the way back down to the Boot Hill of Missouri. Big slight risk around that. So places like Chicago, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, on down into Kansas City again, Oklahoma City, over into just north of Little Rock and Union City, Paducah, Kentucky. So we're Indianapolis. We're really looking at a severe weather threat tomorrow. This could actually go up again in terms of its risk assessment. Big tornado threat. I'm expecting to see more tornadoes tomorrow than today with low-level wind shear. That low pressure is really strengthening and will be providing some spin in the lower parts of the atmosphere. So you really need to watch out from Milwaukee, Detroit, all the way back into southeastern Missouri, covering most of Illinois and Indiana tomorrow too. And we could see that actually go up as we go in terms of threat risk over the next day or so. So 30% chance of wind in there. Hail as well going to be a possibility, but I'm really concerned about tornadoes and wind tomorrow in those areas. And then we go on out to the out into Thursday time frame, parts of the Northeast down into central North Carolina are under the gun for severe weather. Marginal risk up here in the Midwest as well for isolated severe weather reports. But that is what is looking to take place as we go on out of the week. We'll get more into detail on that stuff later on. But right now, temperature-wise, we're looking at temperatures Wednesday, cooler if you can call it cool, upper 70s across the north. Pacific Northwest, you're going to remain cool up in the Cascades and the Olympics, but everybody else is going to be warm, 80s and 90s with hundreds in the desert Southwest. Into Thursday, much the same pattern, a little bit cooler under the trough as it works east into the Ohio Valley, but 90s really working into the west, up into the Great Plains, hundreds, 115, maybe approaching 120 in spots in the desert Southwest. And as we get into Friday, we're starting to see potentially hundreds creeping into the central plains. It is going to be hot under this ridge with a little bit cooler in the northwest around the apex of the ridge in the northern plains and over into the northeast, but everybody else hot and very, very, very muggy. There's your surface map for Wednesday. There's that low pressure, severe weather threat out ahead of that, potentially heavy rain along it, and then pop-up showers and thunderstorms anywhere from the central plains to the northeast to the southeast. And as we get on into Thursday, same sort of regime except for that trough in the front is finally sliding east, and front is going to blast through over the day on Thursday into Thursday evening, bringing a severe weather threat to the mid-Atlantic and to the northeast, and then clear out of the picture as we get on out into time. And here's how the radar potentially is going to look as we go on out through the rest of your work week. We're going to start this on Wednesday afternoon. Low pressure moving up into the Great Lakes, plenty of showers and thunderstorms developing. We could see, as I roll this back a little bit, this broken up area here near the low pressure boundary. This is where the tornado threat, I think, is going to be maximized from Indiana up into Wisconsin. And so you can sort of see that play out. And then we see the line segment develop tomorrow afternoon, kind of wane in the overnight hours, pick back up again as we get on into Thursday afternoon along the northeast and east coast. We see some line segments as we get into North Carolina, Virginia, down into Alabama, into Louisiana. And then what happens as we get on into Friday? A little piece of energy kind of comes across the top of the ridge, but look at the rest of the country here Friday afternoon, folks. Not a lot of activity anymore. We're starting to see that shut off as we get into Friday evening into the overnight hours. Not much of anything except for maybe some storms firing along the edge of that ridge boundary. But look at that. We're going to start to see a big pattern change coming in, and that leads us to our long range forecast. And the long-range forecast is pretty simple here. Look what happens on Saturday. This is the 500 millibar anomaly map. It shows you exactly what's going on in the mid-levels so we can understand what's going on at the surface levels. And I bet if you didn't know a thing about weather, you saw this, you would clue into exactly what I'm getting ready to tell you. Look at this as we go on out into Monday afternoon. From Saturday to Monday, look what happens. We get this big trough in the west, big ridge off the west coast, big ridge in the east. Look at that big high pressure dome. We're going to call this a heat dome. You're going to hear heat waves and heat domes and all of that, but under these big bright orange colors, heat. Under these blue colors, cooler weather and a little stormier to the east and along into the east of those areas there. So that is what goes on out in time. Look what happens as we move along out to mid next week, late next week. Same sort of patterns stays in place. We'll see a few little short waves move through the flow that could spark some showers and thunderstorms. But as we're under a big influence of this big ridge, we're not going to see a lot in the way of active weather in the east, maybe more in the west and in the northern plains is where I would expect to see any severe weather over this time period. But look at this. As we look at our 850 millibar temperatures, that's up about 5,000 feet. It just helps us kind of smooth out the variability of the day, but it shows you where it's going to be hot and cold. Just trust me on that. Biggest heat centered over the Great Lakes into the northeast, but still very, very hot up and down the central and eastern portion of the country as we get on into next week, next Tuesday, Wednesday. Finally, the strength of that ridge starts to mute a little bit, cooler out west, and that's how it sort of plays out. And then over time, it really looks like much of the United States as we get into early July is going to be under the influence of broad ridging, less in the way of precipitation and much more in the way of heat. Precipitation forecast, look at this. So we see kind of the 24-hour increments where we saw lots of rain over the past few days. Look how dry it is now as we get on into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. As I said, we have a few waves moving along the northern tier that may provide some extra showers and thunderstorms, but not much rain is going to fall over the central and eastern and western portion of the country, southwest anyway. So to that end, the Weather Prediction Center, Climate Prediction Center, big signal for above normal here, centered over the mid-Atlantic and up into the northeast, eastern half of the country, below out west, above to below in Hawaii, Alaska, and then down in Hawaii above. And then precipitation everything kind of shows up as above here, but I'm not expecting much precipitation as we go on out into this time period. So I expect this to kind of dry out a little bit, maybe above toward the northern tier, above in Alaska and Hawaii maybe. But look at this, the European model's prediction of high temperatures as we go on out into Monday. 90s everywhere, mid upper 90s along the East Coast. And then look at this, we get on into Tuesday, hundreds, maybe hundreds in the mid-Atlantic, down here into the southeast as well. So we're going to have to watch this. It's going to get very hot. Look at it, showing 103 up here in New Jersey. Probably overdone a bit, but still, folks, this is going to be some serious heat for this time of year, and much above normal. Now we're going to wrap up the show with our geological and space weather update, and you can see the coronagraph here, folks. Look at this, little areas firing off the sun. We've got several little solar filaments that have erupted. Look at that big CME kind of blasting off. That's heading out away from us. We might get a glancing blow from some of this enhanced solar wind coming off the sun. So we're going to watch that. Sunspot 4114. It is center disk now. It's starting to finally turn away, but boy, look at this thing. It is magnetically complex. And we have all kinds of big positive and negative charges, positive and negative interspersed. Again, that means we're on high alert for the risk of a solar flare. We get the right kind of solar flare and a big CME coming off the sun. We can really see some aurora viewing and potentially disruption to electronics and infrastructure. Also, a lot of solar filaments that have been erupting as well on the surface of the sun. So we're watching all of that. Not really a lot going on in the earthquake department, fortunately. Not much to show you in the volcanic department either, so no need to really pull that up. But we're watching all of these events as they transpire, especially the sun. We're kind of on high alert for that, so I'll be watching that. I'll tweet about it at Real Cold Rain, so follow me on X if you haven't done so already. And then we're going to wrap it on up here, folks. That's the end of the show. We're going to take a look at the answer to today's weather IQ question, and it was, what is the primary cause of most earthquakes? The movement of tectonic plates, volcanic eruptions, undersea landslides, meteorite impacts. And the answer is the movement of tectonic plates. The Earth sits on these plates and they rub against each other, they overlap each other, they move away from each other depending on how things are flowing and where we are in the Earth. But you're going to see as these plates interact with each other, pressure builds up. It's a very, very slow process. That's why you just won't get bumping like this all the time. It's very slow. They might slip along and then do like that, but that big slipping, when it finally does happen, or movement over top or underneath, subduction or whatever, causes earthquakes, and those earthquakes can be small or it can be very, very damaging. The longer the tension builds up, the bigger the earthquake's going to be. So that's why you like to see little earthquakes over time as opposed to big ones, because that could be very, very impactful. And that is the answer. Now you know about earthquakes, and you also need to know one more thing. Today, back in 1775, was the Battle of Bunker Hill, and the colonial forces engaged the British in one of the war's earliest and costliest battles. And though the colonists were ultimately pushed back, their fierce defense served as a morale booster for the independence cause. That is the Battle of Bunker Hill. Also in 1950, the first human kidney transplant occurred in the United States. And lastly, way back in 1885, the Statue of Liberty arrived in New York Harbor. And now you know. Now you know the weather, folks. And as always, this is Cold Rain reminding you that if other stations run 24/7, we got you covered 48/14 right here on Cold Rain's Weather World. Take care, folks, and have a wonderful day. We'll see you back tomorrow.